What's up, guys? Dom here on Dom's Anime Den. I got another reaction video for you guys today. Why you should watch or read One Piece. It seems to be a really popular show. I'm really surprised I didn't get into it earlier, but again, those cash cows just make you want to run away. All those crazy episodes. My enthusiasm for anime has not changed. Enthusiasm to watch a long show definitely has stayed the same. I have definitely said I would consider watching One Piece, and I am. I'm gonna, again, like I said, I'm gonna be watching Why You Should Watch and Read One Piece. It's a video by Super Eyepatch Wolf, one of the people commenting on my first One Piece video. Actually suggested to watch these two videos and do a reaction, and I really liked that suggestion before I jump into One Piece, so I am going to watch this video.
We're to try and explain the appeal of long-running shonen storytelling, it would be that these are stories designed to go on for a very long time, and so we inevitably spend a much greater amount of time getting to know their worlds and characters, over the course of which the kind of relation we form with them inherently changes. As rather than being something consumed and then moved on from, these are series that sink into our daily routine and often become a constant, gentle, comforting background noise in the days that make up our lives. And this has been true for me for the vast majority of my life. There's rarely a time I haven't slowly working my way through one of these long-running series, the best of which have become some of my favourite stories I've ever experienced. But it's also a style of storytelling that seems inherently detrimental to itself. Even the very best in the industry have succumbed to the pressure of producing a long-running weekly manga, the eventual fatigue of which has caused even the most monstrously talented authors to either drastically reduce their release schedule or suffer a long-term drop in quality. And yet, there is one artist who, despite the intense lifestyle of being a weekly mangaka, still creates his story with the same energy and vigor as he did 2 decades ago, with a series that's still as loved by its fans now as it was at the heights of its popularity. That artist is Eiichiro Oda, and that story is One Piece. The most notable thing I could say about One Piece in the modern day is that it's still good, and sailing the Grand Blue with the Straw Hats is still a blast, with many fans attesting that the current arc is one of the best in the series' history, and I'm inclined to agree. But the question is, how? How does a series stay interesting and relevant after 20 years? And what is it that makes its fans still so loyal to it? And if you've never read One Piece, what could possibly make the massive commitment of it worthwhile? Well, my dear friends, the day has finally come for us to answer those questions. So let's lower the sails, set out towards the horizon, and talk about why you should watch / read One Piece.
Yes.
The major advantage of having a long-running series is that it allows the author to communicate a much greater degree of information to the reader. And while this can often be to a series' detriment, with many artists forced to prioritize longevity over quality, in the right hands it can be used to build worlds of immense breadth and scale, ones with stories and characters that would be completely impossible in a shorter context. And this is the primary strength of Eiichiro Oda as a writer, his ability to create and sustain a long-running narrative, and one of the primary ways he does this is by grounding his series in a tangible, believable world. While One Piece is at its heart the story of the Straw Hat Pirates and their quest for the treasure of One Piece, it's the detours and locations along the way that make up the primary bulk of One Piece's story. Each new location in the journey of the Straw Hats has its own unique identity, with its own customs, cultures, economy, and inhabitants. And a huge part of the appeal of sailing the Grand Blue with the Straw Hats is uncovering these locations and discovering the mechanics of how they work. Oda has a way of giving even the most visually outlandish locations a tangible feeling of place and structure. Take, for example, Whole Cake Island from the most recent arc. It's a magical land where every inanimate object is alive and the buildings are constructed from confectionery.
Oh,
And at first, it seems like a kind of Disney
I can't
esque
go there. I'm
paradise
diabetic.
until we find out later how the island
I'll eat
became
everything
like
there.
this. Whole Cake Island is under the control of Big Mom, a massive hulking woman with the power to steal life directly from people and transfer it into everyday objects. A power she's used to transform the island into her own distorted wonderland, where no one can leave and people must sacrifice a segment of their lifespan as tax. This setup alone is already a pretty fascinating way to handle a location, but perhaps even more impressive is the detail that's gone into its creation. If you go to the One Piece
Wow.
wiki, you'll find pages of information about this one island alone, with detailed paragraphs on the 10 different locations that
On
form it, including
houses.
a floor-by-floor breakdown of Whole Cake Chateau, the home of Big Mom, including detailed descriptions of the first
Home
floor
cake
library,
chateau.
know what the weather is like on Whole Cake Islands, where and how the residents get their food, or why there are skeletons near the seducing woods. All that information is there for you to dig out. In other words, Whole Cake Island has a tangible sense of geography about it. It feels real
I
because
like
Oda has
that.
taken the time to develop it. And what's more, this is just one of the many examples of the extremely fleshed out developed locations that make up One Piece's world. Zou is a massive forest filled with beast people located on the back of a giant elephant, run by a fierce warrior dog during the day and an equally fierce warrior cat during the night. Dressrosa is a giant city with a massive gladiatorial arena inhabited by bizarre toy people, which are all under the heel of a vicious false king. Thriller Bark is a giant haunted ghost ship
I
that
cannot wait
literally
to see
eats
this.
other
Like,
ships and turns their crew into
I'm
zombies. And
excited.
they've all been fleshed out to a similar degree as Whole Cake Island. And it all comes together to create not just the feeling of one singular massive world, but the worlds within worlds that form One Piece's landscape.
Wow.
And the same ethos applies to the many, many characters who populate it. No character in One Piece is ever constructed in isolation, but rather each individual one has their own allegiances, political geography, history, and driving motivators, many of whom have relationships and backstories entirely isolated from our heroes, like how 100 Beast Kaido and Gecko Moria have beef with each other due to the fact that Kaido was the one who killed Moria's entire crew, forcing him to create the undead army the Straw Hats face off against in Thriller Bark. These slices of character information are often revealed through what seem like tiny throwaway lines, only to become far more relevant to the story later on, to the point that I've lost entire afternoons trawling through the One Piece wiki, going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole, trying to understand
Wow,
how
that's a
all these characters fit together to create the giant, ever-evolving world that is One Piece. And the fact that Oda has had hundreds of chapters to develop the world of One Piece like this means that he's been able to
love
evolve
this.
it into a landscape that begs to be dissected and studied. And if you need proof of this, just look at the communities that have built up around its analysation and discussion. That isn't to say, however, that the story that takes place in One Piece's world isn't vital to its success. It absolutely is. But perhaps just as important as the story Oda tells is the unique way he tells it. Oda is a master in what we're going to refer
Wanted
to
Dead or Alive
as
for Luffy.
short-term
That's
and long-term storytelling. And
serious.
to really understand why One Piece has endured over the years like it has, we need to understand his work from these two distinct perspectives. Short-term storytelling accounts for the moment-to-moment experience of consuming a piece of narrative, how good a job an author has done in laying out their work that makes it pleasurable to consume.
Of
And while I can
course.
think of a few manga authors I would consider technically stronger illustrators than Oda, I can't think of any who have the same innate understanding of how to actually make reading a page of manga enjoyable. And even then, when I say there are technically stronger illustrators than Oda, that's not to take away from Oda's work as much as it is to highlight what's special about it. Rather than concentrating on
That's pretty
intense
awesome.
rendering or meticulous anatomical correctness, Oda's work has a highly organic, expressive quality to it. He's a master at caricature and stylization, often accentuating the proportions and shapes of his characters to extremes for some of the most hilariously goofy but also strikingly unique designs in the industry.
The
And
art
yet
is
he's
definitely
also
unique, I
adept at
will agree.
depicting emotion through his drawings, namely by pushing the facial expressions of the different characters as far as they'll possibly go. Joy, malice, desperation, sadness.
Oh my
He
god,
knows
that crying
exactly
scene
how
is
to depict the
beautiful.
human face in order to give the reader the clearest possible conveyance not only of what a character is feeling, but just how intensely they are feeling it. In short, Oda is adept at conveying information through his images. And this carries right through to every aspect of his manga writing, including the unique way he lays out pages. Go to practically any part of One Piece, and what you'll be met with are pages dense with visual information. While manga is, of
Yes.
course, a visual medium, many series are content to let the dialogue do the lion's share of the storytelling, with the visuals merely serving as an identifier for who is speaking or to highlight character designs. But with Oda, his pages are dense with visual data, with a lot of the world building communicated
Wow.
through images alone.
Those pages
Take
are
this page in the
beautiful.
city of Zou, for example. At no point does anyone point out that the beastmen use the fruit of the giant trees as their homes. That's information you only get by taking the time to explore the page for yourself. And yeah, it's a small detail, but that's kind of the point. Oda's pages are packed with these little visual touches, whether it's a small gag taking place in the corner of a crowd scene, the appearance of a semi-obscure character from a previous chapter, or any number of strange, often hilarious one-off character designs. Oda is an expert at cramming as much visual information into a page as possible, and that means reading and rereading through these chapters is often a surprising and rewarding experience. This visual density does sometimes run the risk of becoming cluttered,
I wonder if he's
especially
gonna
considering the
talk
amount
about
of
why you
text
should
that are
watch it
present at any
also.
given time.
If he's
But
just
what really
doing
helps
it
keep this
half
in
and
check
half.
is Oda's command over the mechanics of how to guide a reader's eye around a page of manga. The creation of sequential events from a single image is something we talked about a lot in our Genius Dragon Ball video.
I remember that
But Oda
scene
may
from
be
Dragon
the
Ball.
only author I've ever come across with as solid a grasp of this as Toriyama, and in some cases I'd say even exceeds him. Take this 1.5 page
Exceeds
spread, for
Toriyama?
example. We start off
That's
on
quite
the
the
right
compliment.
with the Mink Men getting angry at Zoro, then Zoro in return getting angry back, then Luffy responding to Zoro, this dog lady adding to Luffy's response, and then an entirely different conversation taking place on the other side of the room.
I like that.
That's 5 sequential events from a single unbroken panel, and this creates the illusion that as our eye travels from right to left here, time is actively moving with it, which makes it feel like this is an actual event unfolding before us, and not just a group of isolated incidents.
I might want to
And
watch
if
the
you're
manga.
skeptical of this, just look at how less engaging
I mean,
this
read
scene
the
is
manga.
if we insert some panel breaks. The flow is lost, and so is that sense that we are observing an actual scene unfolding. Oda has used this technique so often and in such minor situations that it nearly seems like something he's doing habitually. But he also pushes it in ways that I've never really seen before. My personal favourite example of this being this depiction of 100 Beast Kaido jumping off Sky Island. We get this panel of a silhouette
This guy's
standing on a
genius.
massive precipice before lunging forward to the world below. We turn the page or scroll down and we get this beautifully handled piece of visual storytelling. Starting at the top right of the page, we get these 3 panel breaks, which cause our eyes to linger for just a moment, creating the very slight sense of anticipation and distance, before following the trail of Kaido's fall down through the clouds and slamming into the ground.
I actually just did that.
That's even bigger than the island he's landed on. There is any number of more generic ways that Oda could have depicted Kaido's fall, but doing it this way serves 2 distinct functions. For one, it's just an incredibly fun page to read, really conveying with images alone the sense of velocity and impact of Kaido's massive body slamming into the earth. And second, this also serves as Kaido's introduction into the story, and the fact that that impact is so well conveyed and that Kaido survives it so effectively establishes his immense physical strength and stamina, and thus setting him up as the massive threat he's most likely going to become to the Straw Hats later on, and all this from not even half a page. And so, whether it's through the drawings themselves or through the actual construction and layout of his manga, there's always a sense that Oda is incredibly engaged with the visual storytelling of his work. And the result is that One Piece is a joy to consume on a page-to-page basis. The simple act of reading One Piece feels good. But it's only when Oda's expertise in short-term storytelling is coupled with his ability to write and sustain a long-running narrative that the true strength of his manga becomes obvious. One Piece is a long running story, but I think what separates it from so many other stories of this type is that even from its earliest days, it was always designed to be this way. Oda has actually been writing different versions of One Piece since he was a child. After being inspired by the cartoon show Vicky the Viking, he would
Oh, that's
fill his school
determination right
notebooks
there,
with a
man.
story he only referred to as pirate manga. And this pirate manga would eventually evolve into the short romance Dawn, which would eventually evolve into One Piece. So Oda has been thinking of
Wow.
this narrative and world for a very, very long time. Many of even the most recent characters in One Piece have existed in Oda's mind for years. You can go back through his old interviews and see just how far thinking the story of One Piece actually is. Or even just look back at One Piece's early chapters and see the seeds that Oda
Oh
has
my god,
planted.
and that one
For
didn't even
example, the
show up
character
till years
Silvers
later.
appears in a flashback in chapter 19, only to actually appear in the story and become a prominent character later on in chapter 500. And Oda constantly does
Wow.
this, seeding clues throughout the chapters of One Piece for us to discover and theorize over. Hell, I remember reading a blog post from 2015 that correctly predicted everything about Sanji's backstory that was revealed in the current arc, purely by virtue that his wanted poster said alive as opposed to dead or alive. Oda never feels like he's focused on
Like
just the
Luffy
next
said,
major
dead or
arc or
alive.
plot points, but instead on the long running narrative of One Piece as a whole. And that's not even taking into account everything we don't know. As many of the threads as Oda has tied up during One Piece's run, there are so many more that are left tantalizingly open. How is it that Blackbeard is able to utilize two Devil Fruit powers at the same time? What was the gigantic Cthulhu-esque entity that appeared in the fog in the final panels of Thriller Bark? And my personal favourite, why in a nearly 900 chapter story about pirates has not a single character ever worn an eye patch? And of course, the biggest of all, what
I
exactly
mean, I haven't watched
is
it, so I wouldn't have
One
thought of that,
Piece?
but that's a
The
great
fact that
question.
Oda has so continuously delivered on these long term planted payoffs means that it's very easy to believe that these are questions with answers, meaning that there is always an island on the horizon of One Piece's narrative, always a breadcrumb trail to lead you to the next major story. And discovering where these trails go and how intricately they're worked into the series overall makes reading One Piece extremely satisfying on a long term basis. And so, One Piece is a beautifully entertaining experience in the short term, while also being highly rewarding on an entirely different level in the long term. And it's these two aspects together that explain why so much of One Piece's fan base has remained so loyal to the series over the years, and also a part of why so many people have become so invested in the characters of the Straw Hat Pirates. But before we dive into what makes Luffy and the crew so great, there's a little misconception I'd like to clear up first, and that is the criticism that One Piece has weak character writing because it lacks what people are referring to as character developments. And I think it's important to draw a line here and define the difference between character development and character progression. Character
Oh.
progression can also be referred to as the narrative arc of a character. They start at A and eventually end up at B. And it's a powerful storytelling tool, but not one that is required for good
I like that.
story. Take Cowboy Bebop, for example. There is little to no progression in any of its three central characters. Jet, Spike, and Faye don't learn any life lessons or become better people, and that is kind of the point. But that doesn't mean they aren't well developed. Character development refers to how fleshed out a character is, their history, their goals, their strengths, their weaknesses, what their perspective on the world is, and how they came to view it that
Absolutely.
way. And while there isn't a great degree of character progression among the Straw Hats, each and every one of them is extremely well developed. Each one with a highly distinctive personality, from the stark indifference Zoro shows in most situations to Frankie, Luffy, and Chopper's inexhaustible enthusiasm for the world around them. Each Straw Hat has their own unique charm, and each one has their own compelling and often heartbreaking histories. To this date, Brooks' story of his final performance for his crew is about the only time I've ever cried while reading a manga. And fuck you, I'll cry whenever I damn well please. And even then, there
You
is
got that
character
right. I
progression.
cried
It
too,
just
bro. Don't
tends to
worry.
happen very slowly. Just look at Usopp's journey from lying coward to Sniper King to actual competent member of the crew. As well written as the Straw Hat Pirates are individually, however, their true appeal only comes through when they're considered as a unit, when considered as the Straw Hat Pirates. And to understand why, we need to first understand what being a pirate in One Piece's world actually means. The choice to become a pirate in One Piece means that you've essentially decided to shirk off the constraints of society, choosing to live outside world law and instead forging your own path and creating your own way of life. And forming a pirate crew means that you've found a group of people willing to share in these values. In other words, you've found friends willing to accept you for who you are and who will fight for your way of life. This is
Hell
the
yeah.
concept of nakama that is so pervasive throughout One Piece, which translates roughly to friend, comrade, or crewmate, or as the One Piece fans have come to consider it, someone who is closer than family. And this is the bond shared by Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats.
I
It's
felt
obvious
that.
that each one in their own way is both proud and delighted to be part of the crew. They like spending time with each other and exploring the world together, and this is something consistently reinforced by Oda in his many coloured illustrations of the Straw Hats, most of which depict them just hanging out and having a good time. And I love these pages because they really get across the camaraderie felt by these characters and the friendship they share. Each member of the Straw Hats also has their deeper reasons for wanting
There's
to
nothing
be
like
part of the
unity and
crew,
family
as
and
each member
togetherness.
has
Nothing
at
like
some
it.
point lost someone extremely
Even if
close
it's
to
not
them.
your
And
blood
that event
family.
usually causes them to lose their place within the world, a place they eventually only rediscover upon joining the crew. And I think this only furthers the appeal of the Straw Hats. They're a group of friends who have found each other in a massive sprawling world and who value that friendship more than anything. And over the course of One Piece, it's hard not to feel drawn into this dynamic yourself, like you aren't in some small way part of the crew. And I think this
I'm
is
so
a
drawn
primary
to it, and I
reason why
haven't even
so many
watched the show
people
yet.
feel such a strong emotional investment in the familial concept that is the Straw Hat
He's clearly invested,
Pirates.
even the way
But
he's
it's also
explaining it
this
to me.
same emotional investment that
To
Oda
us.
leverages in order to create the most dramatic moments of tension and conflict within One Piece's story. While Luffy and Co face many dangers throughout their voyage, nothing ever feels as high stakes as when the unity of the Straw Hats is threatened. There's various points in the journey when, due to either
Absolutely.
external or internal factors, a member of the crew will decide to leave of their own accord, and these inevitably become some of the most emotionally impactful moments of the entire series. One such example is early on in the fantastic Water 7 arc. After sustaining repeated damage over the course of the journey, Luffy decides that it's time to condemn the crew's old ship, the Going Merry, a decision that Usopp takes umbrage with, as up until this point he has been the one maintaining the ship. But it's obvious that his actual real worry is that he too will eventually be left behind by the Straw Hats. Tempers flare and the situation quickly spirals out of control as Usopp declares to the shock of the others that he's decided to leave the Straw Hats, and it culminates in a brutal showdown between Luffy and Usopp to decide which one will take ownership over the Going Merry. It's one of the best fights of the entire series, but what always stays with me about it is the visible effect the encounter has on the rest of the crew, each one visibly shaken by the violent clash of their captain and former friend, as nothing is more upsetting to these characters than the breakdown of the family they've all grown to be a part of. It's a beautifully
Absolutely.
sad episode, and one I really encourage you to go check out. It's one of the better produced episodes of the anime, and even if you have no interest in consuming the rest of One Piece, this is a great example of how strong the character writing in the series can actually be. The other major example of how well Oda handles his characters can be seen in how he establishes the many villains of One Piece's world. In the same way he can utilize a character's backstory to establish an incredible amount of tragedy and sympathy, he's equally capable of utilizing this same technique to create a palpable, justified sense of fear and danger within a character. My personal favourite example of this being the terrifying Don Quixote Doflamingo. Now, we spent way too much time in the last video going through a character's backstory, and this video is already insanely long, so unfortunately we don't really have time to go through it. So, moving quickly along, god fucking damn it, okay, I can't help myself, here we go. Don Quixote Doflamingo was born to the most elite class of the family, known only as the world nobles or celestial dragons. A class of people of such wealth and power that they can commit atrocities in public without any fear of legal repercussion. A young Doflamingo greatly valued this elite status until one day his father declared that the family would be abandoning their life of excess and lordship in exchange for living an honest life as regular people, and in doing so disregarded their noble status. A decision they'd come to regret. Banished from the sacred land of Merios, the family began their new life as regular citizens, only to return to their home one night to find it set ablaze. Word had spread to a nearby village about the noble family no longer under government protection, and it brought out the seething, long-term hatred its people felt for the celestial dragons. A hatred that took the form of a series of violent assaults against Doflamingo and his family. Persecuted and driven from their home, the family were forced to take refuge in squalor, eating only garbage to survive. There, their father, now desperate and afraid, contacted the world nobles in the hopes of returning his terrified family to Merios. But he was met with only scorn, and he and his family were abandoned to the cruel world they had chosen to become a part of. The continuing ordeal slowly took its toll on Doflamingo's mother, who grew more ill with each passing day until eventually her life slipped away. And just as it seems like the remaining family had nothing left to lose, they were once again attacked by the scornful villagers, only this time they were captured, tied to their former burning mansion and tortured. The experience awakened within Doflamingo a great rage, a rage that manifested itself in the form of his emperor's haki, which he used to subdue the villagers and save his remaining family. But at this point, Doflamingo was so consumed with the hatred for the people who tormented him, hatred for the celestial dragons that abandoned his family, and even hatred for his own father, whom he blamed for the entire ordeal. This would later result in Doflamingo killing his father and vowing to one day take everything that the celestial dragons have built up and burn it to the ground, his rage manifesting in a twisted grin as he declared war on all of existence. And this is the man that Luffy and the crew must face in the Dressrosa arc. This is the kind of writing that makes so many of these villains from One Piece so compelling,
losing your damn
but also
mind.
gives the eventual conflicts between Luffy and these characters such weight and drama, to the point that I would say I don't actually find the bigger fights in One Piece as well written or choreographed as encounters from other series, but it hardly seems to matter due to what an excellent job Oda has done in framing these encounters in the emotion of their characters. Take the monumental showdown between Luffy and Rob Lucci, for example. What really makes this fight
the cheetah
work
guy
is
is Rob
less of the
Lucci.
tactics
That's
or
what his name
actions of the
is.
characters, but more the clashing of the two's diametrically opposed emotions and ideology. Luffy is, of course, the embodiment of adventuring and free spirit, the belief that people should be allowed to pursue their dreams without worry or constraints, and Rob Lucci is the crushing wall of reality that stands in the way of all that. The personification of the faceless world government that seeks to regulate and control every aspect of society. And this setup lends real narrative weight to every blow.
Now that's a real topic right there.
So finally, it is of course only fair to mention what I consider some of One Piece's weaker points. And the biggest by far is the handling of the anime. I do actually find it more tolerable than most, with some of the action scenes having some genuinely fantastic animation. But the production does drop a lot outside these moments, and that coupled with some truly awful pacing means that it's hard to recommend the anime as anything other than a companion piece to the manga. While Oda is exceptional at creating a wide variety of characters with all manner of shapes and body types, he does draw a lot of his girl characters very, very similar. And while I like sexy characters in my anime, this is one of the few areas of the series that feels phoned in. In other words, I think Oda has it in him to do better with his fan service. The pacing of One Piece can be sometimes jarring to the point that it's a little frustrating. It's common for the focus to shift from character to character, with many fights occurring simultaneously. And while this sometimes creates a great sense of spectacle and chaos, it can also kill the momentum of a particular encounter, cutting away just as things are getting heated. And again, this is a problem way worse in the anime. The biggest barrier to entry, however, has to be its extreme length. Anyone new to the series could spend months and even years trying to catch up on it, and wait many more for its eventual conclusion. But I think, in a way, this is
Crazy.
also the series' biggest strength. When I think of what I love about One Piece and what keeps me coming back, it isn't the eventual promise of finding out what One Piece is or the conclusion to arcs that I know are most likely dozens of chapters away, but rather it's just the opportunity to return to this world and spend more time with these characters. To see them fight and struggle and chase their dreams, and in turn see how the world's many moving parts react to them.
That's
This
my biggest
is the kind of
investment when I
story that
love
could only
an
be told
anime.
over years. One
That's what keeps
carefully
me
built
going.
over hundreds and hundreds of chapters, where each corner of its world feels realized, and yet where each horizon still brims with potential. And if you're new to One Piece, this is the reason I think it's still a commitment so worth making. As it's a story to get lost in, one to grow up alongside, and one with worlds and characters that will stay with you for years to come. And this, friends, is the best reason
I can see his love for One Piece.
of why you
It's
should
literally
watch
giving me goosebumps.
slash read One Piece.
That was awesome, dude. That was amazing. That was incredible. Absolutely love it. I loved that video. I loved why you should watch or read One Piece. He did a great job of really just conveying to me why I should watch this. And I mean, there was moments that he spoke with such passion about the show that I'm just like, how can I not watch something that people out there love like this? And I know that I have loved anime shows just like he does. And there are some shows that I felt just like this about. So I'm so excited to start the show, and please look out for my season 1, episode 1 One Piece reaction, guys. It's coming. If you guys have any suggestions, comment below. If you like this reaction video, subscribe, comment, click that notification bell, and share this channel. That's it on Dom's Anime Den.